everybody, welcome. Please let me know if you can hear and if you can see really well. I just want to make sure that I'm closing the door so we don't have any extraneous noise. Yay, I'm back. I am so excited to be here today. You can see I've got something new to share. And right off the bat, I'm going to tell you that what I'm introducing today is this BSR capable Sew Steady table. So if you don't have this BSR capable machine, that's okay. Then you can just use any Sew Steady table for your ruler work. But because this is a new product that has a great feature for those people with these machines, I'm going to use my Sew Steady time here to make sure that those people know about that. So hope you won't be frustrated if it's not your machine, but you know, we do try to always make sure that we hit what everybody needs, so we kind of have to go in different directions sometimes. So my machine is the 590. This is a Bernina machine, and if you look on the screen right there, you can see that it has the words BSR. So the BSR, let's see if I can actually show you a picture of it. I should have got this out first, but I didn't think of it. You can't really see it. All right, so here is a picture. This is the BSR right here. This is what it looks like. It attaches onto the Bernina machine. And this part of it right here has a little sensor window on the bottom. And as the fabric moves, that sensor determines how fast you're going, and it tells the machine. And so it makes the machine speed up and slow down to match your stitches. So if I choose stitches at 2 millimeters, then that is capable of keeping this at the same number. So right now, let's get a little closer, I'll show you. We're just going to kind of zoom in on the screen so I can show you what you would do if you were adjusting this for yourself at home. Hi, Bonnie. Hi, Linda. I'll say hi to a couple people too. Hi, Daria. Welcome from Pennsylvania. And Sandra. On this machine right now, I actually have my BSR foot plugged in. So what you would get is you would get this extra long cord with your table, and that is going to connect to this BSR cable right there. It would actually plug into that, which would allow you to plug it from the back of the machine around to the front. And then right here, when you're on the screen, you can see that says BSR. So this would be off, BSR off, and when it's highlighted like that and it's black, that's BSR on. And right now I have BSR 2 selected. So that's what we're recommending with this table. And I'm going to scoot over a little bit, and I'm going to show you how we have it connected real quick. Let me just kind of get us down a little bit. Okay, so right there, actually cut out of the table, right here is the BSR link. This is a little screw, and there are some sizing washers that go underneath it, and there's a little thumb screw right underneath here that I would tighten up in order to hook this on. And there are some specific things. You want to make sure that this sensor is a little bit high. So you want to use all of the little washers that come with it, because when the fabric is on it, it needs to be sensing that fabric. We want to try to reduce any gap between that sensor. So I won't touch it with my finger because that would get it dirty, but you could use a microfiber cloth over time if it gets a little linty or something like that, and just wipe that off. Make sure your sensor is clean. And then, as I told you, I'm plugged in, and you can see that my machine recognized that my BSR was attached. So let's grab something real quick and show you how it works. And this is also our sample for today. So I think that based on how much work is on this sample, we're probably going to need maybe 2 sessions, because I don't know that 2 hours will be enough to show all the things that we want to show with this. So let's scoot out, and we're going to show you the foot, and I'm also going to show you the BSR light as we sew. Okay, so just for your reference, the BSR is right there. Okay, when I sew, I can actually feel it with my fingers through the fabric. I can actually feel the BSR. And if I'm just sewing right over here, I'll just kind of stitch right here on the edge. I want to show you what you need to watch out for. So if my foot is down, I need to engage this BSR. As I press the gas, you'll see that the light is on right there. That tells you your BSR is activated. It's trying to work, but it's waiting for you to move. So I'm going to keep a little pressure right here to keep the fabric engaged with it. And as I sew, it'll speed up and slow down and match how fast I'm moving. Okay, and I'm just going to cut this really quick so we can show you something. Okay, now I'm going to bring it up to you so you can see those stitches. Now those look kind of small, right? And the reason that they look small is because right now my stitch length is set for 1.65, kind of tight. So I'm going to just change it. I'm going to move it up to 2, which is pretty common, standard stitching. And then we'll do a little comparison and we'll sew so you can see that regulation. Okay, we'll just do the same thing, and I'm activating right here. This is where my BSR is. So I'm just making sure that I can try to keep that fabric in good contact. And I did not find that to be something difficult to do with my ruler. You know, I didn't find it was a challenge to do that. So here we'll just put a little stitching in there. Now that means that you have the potential to choose whatever size stitch that you want to. You're not limited to one or the other. Okay, so that's 2. That's kind of a normal stitch. And then you can see that this one is quite a bit tighter, right? Here, I'll show you them both at the same time. But you can see it's regulating those stitches. It's helping them to be the correct distance apart. So what happened is a Bernina dealer, Bernina Jeff, he knew that ruler work users that have Bernina have this BSR, which wasn't suitable for using with their rulers. And he engineered a way to make it possible in collaboration with Sew Steady. And I absolutely find that completely empowering, because in our industry, we have always so much innovation that is specifically done by sewers, for sewers, with their input, with their experience, to try and make our process better than ever. Right now, my table is the large table. I don't have any fancy stuff on it. I don't have the drawer. I don't have the holes for circle sewing, but you can have that if you want it. If you just want the plain cutout, this is just the large table. You would order the large table and you would add this BSR cutout as an optional item. And I've put the link for that in my affiliate link in the description of this event so that you'll have the opportunity to see that. So right now, I have this already set at 2 millimeters stitches as I sew, and now we're going to just start sewing. So right here, one other thing I want you to realize is this is just my regular grid glider. I lined it up perfectly as best I could, and then I marked which cutouts I wanted to get rid of so that I could make sure this sensor was visible. And then I used my ruler and I just cut right on the lines. Now you could do that if you have just the ruler work glider. You can do the same. I didn't want this not to be able to stick, so I actually cut it a little bit bigger so it would actually stick right where it's flat. Like I didn't want where the cutout is to be half on and off. So all of my cutout is a little bit bigger and it is right on the table. So this edge right here is not going to be flipping up. But you can do it on the ruler work glider too. And the reason I lined it up is in case I ever do want to use it and I need this to be exposed for any reason, then I can have my center line and my center line, and I can have my BSR foot as well. Can I pull up the glider? So it's just a regular table. Somebody just asked, can I pull up the glider? Sure, no problem. It's just a glider right there. So this is that BSR foot. This is there's a little black thumb screw right there that is just holding this in place. And this is the BSR right here. This is the connector. This cable is going to come with the product. This is part of the process. You don't have to purchase this separately. If I just unplugged it, you can see that's the cable and that's the BSR. And right now my machine is just like, what did you do? So I'm going to just stick that back on, right? Just like that. And tell my machine, don't worry, the BSR is in control, everybody's happy. And I'll just leave this down here. I like this in front. I kind of want to know what's happening with this so it's not, giving me any trouble. And then right here, Bernina is a front load machine. So if I need to check my bobbin, I can just lift this up a little bit so that the table clears the door. I can change my bobbin, and then I just pop that closed and just let everybody get back into their place. All right, so hopefully that was good. You were able to see that. So right now, I think that Bernina is the only one who has this style of regulation. Somebody just asked, if you already have a table, do you have to order a new table? That is such a good question. I don't know if Sew Steady has the answer to that yet, but I think that is definitely something worth asking. So I will pass that along and see what that process entails and see if that is an option that can be added to your existing table. I don't know the answer, so I will have to figure that out for you. So let's see what else, what other questions we have so far. Okay, I'm gonna have to scroll back a little bit and make sure I can try to get some of these questions because this is new. I just want to make sure. Oh, hi! I just turned my camera around, but that's okay. You probably wanted to say hi anyway, right? All right, so let me scroll down. Presumably this is, so Suyu asked, is the cable approved by Bernina? I will tell you that right now, this whole process is not necessarily endorsed by Bernina, but it's a simple cable. I mean, this is not complicated. I mean, if you plug a USB cable into your Dell computer, do you need it to be a USB cable approved by Dell? Probably you don't. It's a pretty common data cable. So it's working great. I mean, and I've taken that off and I've put the BSR on regular and just sewn with it, and it works just fine. It hasn't caused any problems or challenges that I've seen. I appreciate that we always want to have Bernina approved because we don't want to void our warranty, but we are using it pretty much exactly in the way that it needs to be. But I did answer your question that it is not Bernina endorsed. So just for clarity, I'll make sure I say that. Okay, so let's see how we're doing. You're waiting on a FAF. I know there's always, we try to fit everybody as best we can. So I showed you how it attached. That was somebody's question. And then I don't know about a cabinet. Ooh, I'm trying to scroll and I keep touching the button. Okay. It's got this little star thing on here and I don't know how to turn that off so that I can just get that out of my way. I wish I could move it. Let's see if I can get that out of here. Nope, can't. Okay, well let's sew, right? So let's talk about what we're gonna do today. I already got some fabric ready and I got a design and I put it out on the fabricated quilts and kind of let people see it, but we'll put it up here and I'm gonna just adjust the camera a little bit so we can get a little better angle on it. So thank you for that sales pitch and letting me share that with you. I know that there's lots of Bernina users who would really like to be able to use that function. It's a fantastic tool that you've paid for and you want to be able to use it. So I hope that that was useful for those folks. So today I'm going to be sharing a design that is created with most of the Fun and Fancy tools, and I'll show you those as we go. And the other piece that I'm going to be using is this Circles on Quilts template right here. And I'm only using one, and just for clarity, I'm using the even numbered fan. But what I want to point out is that as we go, I want you to think about, if you don't have the template I'm using, what do you have that you could use similarly? For example, if I'm using this Circles on Quilts, right, I'm going to be using this one at some point, and I'm going to be using it in a unique way. Well, maybe you don't have this one. Maybe you have the Circles on Quilts 36. You probably can use it the same way. So don't think about it as I want to make it exactly like mine. I want you to, you can make it like mine if you want to, but if you don't have that exact tool, I want you to try to be thinking about what's in your own toolbox that you can be using in a similar way to create your own fantastic design. Okay, so let's show you where we're going to start. The very first thing we're going to do, this is a circle right here. This is an 8-inch circle, so it's just the center pin, and this can be stitched in as it is showing right here, or if I'm just marking it, I don't have to sew it in. If I wanted to put this element in here, I wouldn't stitch this because I don't want this line going through my design. But if I was doing it like this, I could have that circle right through the middle, and that would be something that you could just use sort of like an ice cream cone. This line can exist or not. The way we're going to do it is I want to show you how to put this shape in, and I don't want this cutting through it. So I'm going to mark the circle before I sew, and I'm going to use the circle as the reference markers, so we won't actually sew it in this first iteration. If we sewed it, this is what it would look like. It would be this arc right here, and it would go all the way around. But we're actually going to do this, so it's going to mark the intersections right here where we're going to stop. So I'll show you that. That's the first piece we're going to do. Alrighty, let's get that fabric up here. All right, and people ask, and I actually got a really good input from Betty Briscoe, so I'm going to just tell her, thank you for your input. She said that I get a little irritated, I think, when people are like, what size is that? Because they want to do the exact size. And she says, well, it's not so much that they need the exact size. She says they need a reference. They need a visual size reference. So I want to give the information, and I appreciate her feedback on that. So I'm going to be sharing some of the data about size. Our circle that we're going to start with is the 8-inch circle. Okay, so we're going to be just using that. And I'll put the pin in because we'll need that first. So we'll put the pin right at the center. The fabric that I'm using is about 28 and maybe a little bit wider, but like 28 by 28 would be a reasonable size for this design. It would fit in this space. So if you were trying to do this design and follow along with the class, if you had 28 by 28, you'd be plenty big enough. So let's address one more aspect of this BSR table. Obviously, my fabric has to be big enough that it's going to cover that BSR. If it's not big enough to cover it, it can't sense anything. So, this is where it is. It's only this far from the foot, but your fabric essentially would have to be big enough that as you move it, it still is connected to that BSR. If it doesn't cover it, then you're not going to have any regulation. Okay, so let's put it on. And as we said, what we're doing is we're marking. Okay, we're not going to be stitching right now. We're marking this 8-inch circle. So let me get my chalk. And I'll get my stitching line discs. So this is another way that you can use your stitching line discs and make this valuable for you, and you're not necessarily sewing. Let's make sure I can get this to actually mark. And then I'll just so I'm touching on the bottom, and I'll just kind of pull this. Oh, it does not want to go. There we go. So when I'm doing this on the table with pen, it's a lot easier to get it to mark. So let's turn this a little bit. Make sure everybody's flat. And I'm going to just come back over here because I think I did not get a good marking right there. All right, so we'll just rotate it and we'll just create the mark because we need a really nice, clean mark. So can I do this a different way? Yes, of course. If I just wanted to mark on the lines a certain distance away, I could do that. Like if you wanted to mark, 4 inches from the center for all of these cross marks, you can. But I thought that this would be offering two different things. It would offer some design potential if you actually stitched it, and then it also makes it really easy to just get these markings on here really fast. You know, I just put that pin in and then I don't have to worry. I just make the marks and then we're all set. So this has got a little bit of wonk in there, but good enough. So the pen I'm using, just for clarity, Fons and Porter. This is just ceramic chalk, compressed chalk. That's it. Okay, so let's make sure over here I had a little snafu, so I want to make sure these connect nicely. Right there. So you can see I got a little bit of a wonky line, so I'm just going to make sure I know which line I'm using here. Get these off. And I didn't draw this in. I could have made this circle earlier, but I wanted to make sure that you see this part of the process. So what happens now is these marks right here are all the same distance from the center. So as I'm building the rest of the design, I have the same spacing. Okay, so let's take the pin out and I'll show you what we're going to do first. All right, put that in a safe spot. So right now I've got my lines and they're actually two different colors. It's really subtle, but this one's kind of pinkish and this one's white. So just pick one of your lines and you're going to stay on the same. So the one that's in the middle, we'll be doing this one will be skipping as we go. So I want to start in the circle, actually out here. So let me see if I can get my presser foot down. And I want to get my needle right in that intersection where the circle is. Oh, darn it. Pull up that bobbin thread. I used my scissors earlier, could you tell? So now I couldn't pick up that bobbin thread. All right, let's get our bobbin thread up. And you know, right here as you see it, if you need to make any adjustment to your position, go ahead and do that. Get your needle right in that center position. Okay, now I happen to know from playing that this arc right here will bring me to the center of this space. So whatever you're doing at home, if you needed it to fit a different space, I'm going to just show you how I'm going to line it up. I want it very visible for you guys. So let's show you what we're doing here. Get in just a little tighter. All right, and I'm going to kind of scoot up, make sure we're getting these questions as we're going. Would you let all of us know where you find out? Yes, so I will, if I find out information about the table. If you have a Bernina without a BSR capability, there's no benefit for you to have this, right? Yes, so next person asked, Susan Tapp asked, could you have it with a wish table? Yes, so you can have it with the large table or the wish table. So here's the center. We're going to stitch into the center just once. We're not going to double stitch. And when we do the other ones, we are going to double stitch all the other ones. And at the end, we'll stitch back out and that will get us to the outer edge of the circle. So I'll show you what I mean. And just for you to note, the way that we're going to use this, we're not going around in a circle. We're going in and then we're going out. So what I did is I did put my staple tape on the opposite side because in order to stitch the other way, we're going to flip it. Okay, so if I put this on here right now, I'm on 12. And notice that this is exactly the perfect size to get right into the center. So pick a side. You can do inside or outside, and this spacing, maybe for your first one, in order to set your vision, you may want to use your spacing gauge and get you right to the center. So if you're on this side or this side, you know, whichever one, use whichever one you want and get yourself into the center. Now, can you see that? How if I move slowly, it's going to move slow. If I move faster, it's going to move faster. And I've got to make sure that that fabric is activated. Right? So I'll get right to the center and stop. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew around to each of these alternating ones. So we're here, we're going to come out to this one. And an easy way to get that lined up is just stick that on there and we'll go in and out right to this one right now. So what I want to do is all of these are going to be double stitched now back to the center. That is going to give you a lot of great texture and something really, really defined as far as the stitching. So right to that center point. And right back to the center. And then, what did I say? We're going to skip the pink, and then we'll just line it up on the next one. You can use your spacing gauge. That's really going to help you make sure that you have good connection, that you get right to that circle space. And I can feel that BSR. I can feel that I'm touching it. So it sounds a little different, I think, than when I stitch without it, because obviously it's responding to my motion. And one of the things that I think is unique about it is it kind of shows you how your motion is choppy. You know, because if you were moving perfectly smooth with that BSR, it wouldn't sound choppy. But what happens is if I move choppy, it sounds choppy. So I'm going to make sure that right there, I've got some pressure on that. If you feel like you can't move and the stitching won't sew, then you may not have good contact with that BSR. So that would be something that you'll watch out for as you use it. So you can see we're just putting it on the one side, and we'll just keep going around, skipping each time, and then get us right into that edge of the circle. Okay, and I will rotate a little bit just so I can make sure that you guys can see what we're doing as we go. All right, so making sure I'm skipping, getting lined up with each one. So if I move faster, if I move slower, you can tell that it's regulating because it's trying to understand how fast I'm moving. That's why you see a difference as we sew. And let's see, here we go. Let's keep moving. So skip. I want to be really careful because I don't want to mess up the design. You know me, I always mess up. I get the wrong line, the wrong reference. Okay, and we'll come right back. So you can see how that circle can be a really great, easy reference for us as we go. All right, we are almost around to our starting point. And make sure I have my 1/4 inch to get me right into that edge of the circle. As I slow down, what I want to do is just really make sure that I get a nice, precise location right here. You know, I'm trying to make this so that each of these really come out nicely. Once I get some more stitching in there, that won't matter as much. So right now, we need to do the other side of this one and come back to the center, and then we'll go the other way. So I'll show you what I mean. Right here, we'll put this one in. We want to actually connect it. So here, it's even more important that we're going to be using that spacing gauge because we actually want to close this and connect it to that other side. So right there, connect it, come right back to the center. Okay, now we explained that we want to do this same shape on all of them, but you can see that this would, you know, I could do it like this, but I like having this part as the anchor. So if I flip it over, I can use this as the anchor because that's a really defined position, which is not variable. And then when I line it up on the outside, I can use that spacing gauge and I can get my needle to connect right up with my existing design. So did you see I tried to sew, but it wasn't going? So what that tells me is right now my BSR isn't kind of getting that registration that it needs. Right? So you may have to adjust your hand position a little bit and make sure you can get that BSR to connect well. Okay, so here we go. Oh, what happened there? I think I have a little bobbin issue right there. Let's see what happens. we're just going to keep sewing, guys. Let's see. If it snags up, I'll fix it, but maybe it'll work itself out here for just a second. Sometimes it just gets a little snag. So again, want to make sure that I have that good connection on that BSR. So this is what we're getting. I kind of have a little bit of a gap right here on this little one. Because of the way we're going to do the rest of the designs, if this happens to you, don't worry about it. We can easily fix it when we're adding some of the next elements, right? So this design has a lot of flexibility, and we'll just keep on finishing this up, and we'll try to get these in pretty quickly so we can add some of the next items. So has anybody ever used their circles on quilts kind of as a reference in order to connect a design like that? So anytime that you want to create a certain amount of space and distance from your center, you could go ahead and use this in order to do that. You can literally use this exact circle in all these different sizes, and that will give you the correct distance from the center. So if that's an easy way to mark, right? So let's turn it. We'll go ahead and get some of the rest of these on there. I just wanted to reiterate. So with the BSR, we have two different methods. We have the BSR 1. Let me press a button and see if we can get that one to activate. BSR 1, what happens with the BSR? There's two different ways that it can be used. Right now, what we want is for it to sense our movement as we move, and we don't want it to wait for the fabric. So that's kind of what happens here, is it's waiting for movement, like I have to push it first. With the 2, it's going to start right away, which lets us move more smoothly as we go. So here, let me put this down, adjust my hand. So whenever you are using this particular technique for ruler work, we're recommending that you use the BSR number 2. That's going to give you a little bit easier movement. It responds, I think, a little bit better, and that'll be something you want to look for with your own setup. So I'm going to keep my hand down here. It's a little bit of a training process. I have to keep moving it down to make sure that I have good connection right there, so that it's touching really well and it's making that connection. So it's actually right here where my thumb is, and that way I can make sure that it's sensing that movement. That's just a little bit of a training that you'll be doing as you get yours, and I don't think that's any big deal, because I think that's quite common, that you would need to make some adjustments in order to use different tools, just like we use different procedures when we quilt with our ruler foot than we do with free motion. Well, it's the same thing. We're just going to learn that process. Here we'll connect right up, and we'll just go right backwards. So as long as we have a good connection with our movement, it's going to sense that. So we just don't want any gap. And that's why you would want that BSR maybe to be up a little bit higher. All right, so let me show you where we're at. We're on the last one. We're going to put this one in, and then this one, remember, was only single stitched, right? So we want to be able to come back out on the design, and we're going to use that single stitched area to return to the outside edge of the circle. Okay, so we've shown you this a few times, but let's go ahead and we'll talk about this, making sure we can get this nice and clean. I'm going to clip these threads. This line is the line that is already single stitched. Okay, if I want to line this up exactly, first I need to actually be on that line. So right up at the top, I'm going to scoot down just a little bit and get onto this stitch line. Once I do that, I can line this up and get this exactly 1/4 inch away, and then I should be able to stitch right back out right where I want to. If it's off a little bit, I really don't care. I'm good with it. All right, So that's a really different way that you can use your circles on quilts. These arcs maybe can be used in many different ways. They are not really able to be rotated to make them longer because the point of rotation is here. But if you have a short distance that you want to connect like we did, this can be really useful and allow you to make a beautiful curve from point to point. And having so many different sizes allows you to find the one that's the perfect fit for yours, for your space. So let's put this away real quick. All right, and you guys know I'm a messy pig when I sew, so I do have everything super organized today. You want to see? Let's hope I don't drop it. So I've got all the tools that we're going to use, and so the next one we're going to use is this one. This is the insert from the 3 by 1.5 inch oval, right? And we're going to use this one just because it's convenient. I like that it's an outside curve for this purpose. So I could use this one or this one, it won't matter. This one is going to be a little different diameter. This one's a little bigger, taller and wider. Then this one's a little narrower and a little shorter from side to side. So that's how they end up sewing out. Even though they look like they're the same, this one's going to sew on the outside of the cutout, and this one would sew on the inside of the cutout. So there's going to be a 1/2 inch differential between these two pieces whenever you use them. Okay, so let's scoot that off. So you see my ruler rack. I'm trying to be organized today. All right, we have awesome lines that we can use right here. So I'm just going to kind of scoot this and smooth it out. Notice that I made my line super long, right? It's really long. I did that because I have several times that I need a line out here or a line in the middle as a visual reference. So right now, when I scoot this on, I have the potential to line this up right on the line, and it should be pretty close to that 1/4 inch, almost exactly. We can always check it. You know, we can just do a little fudging right there if we need to. And this right here is where we can clean up that little problem child if we need to, right? So we'll just get over to this other spot, try to get right into that. And if I need to, let's just close that little guy right there. So now he's already closed off, he's fixed. And we'll just keep going around. So this is a beautiful little spacer right here. We're right in the center, which is going to make that arc really pretty. And now we can just get sewing. And we'll stop right in the corner, try to get right to the top. And the same thing here. We're going to line it up right on the line and try to get right at that 1/4 inch, making sure that we're activating that BSR as we sew. Oh, 1 stitch too far. So look at how cool it looks so far. Doesn't that look awesome? I'm loving it. So we're going to add some more. Let's go ahead. We'll try to go around real quick. You guys don't mind if I sew, right? Because we want to show you ultimately what it looks like. And if we don't actually sort of finish the stitching, I think it makes it harder for you to visualize what it's going to look like when we're done. Okay. Try to get right to that center point. And then we'll just keep going. So having those crosshair lines in the middle, you can see how important that they are. They're really valuable to being able to get some extra reference marks in there. So that's why I added those in. So I use the 8-point crosshair, and I have 16 lines with this design in order to have those extra reference lines. So get right to the point, right on that circle. And you can see we're almost done already. So right now we've used the circles on quilts for almost all of that center positioning. Okay, and then we'll do this last one. So same thing, we want to really get a nice clean closure on that design. Okay, so let me show you kind of on the sample. We're going to put this guy away. This is the insert for the 3 by 1.5 inch oval. And let me see. This is oh, I hate that my camera is in the way of all of your questions. So I'm going to try to scoot it over just a little bit. Thank you. Somebody said they felt like this was a very cool design, and I'm just going to scroll up and see if there's some questions. Yeah, so this table will definitely work with the 770. Any of the BSR capable machines are going to be able to use this. So yes, even like a 440, even an older BSR machine will still be able to do this. So, and I think I said my fabric square is about 28 inches square. Mine's a little bit of a rectangle, but that's just, but it will fit, this design will fit in that 28-inch square. So let's see. All right. So anyway, we've just used the circles on quilts and we've used this oval. We're going to go ahead and add another template now. And we're trying to sort of maximize some of the potential of this Fun and Fancy set and show you just some different ways that you can utilize it. I did not plan this, but it just so happens that on this size circle, the distance from here to here happens to be right about this distance. I don't know how that happened, but I just put it on there and I was pleasantly surprised that it fits. Now you know that this is a narrower side and this side is deeper. I can use either one of these or none of them. What I'm going to do is I want to put the hook where the foot is, okay, because that lets me position this pretty much exactly. And I'm just going to get this center line lined right up. And if you'll see right there, this is almost exactly that 1/4 inch right there. Now, I did not plan that out. It was just a sort of a happy accident, but since it worked so well, I was like, okay, I'm doing that. So now we can put a little scallop in there. And I think that's great because these can definitely work together. And I'll put my foot right in the arc and just do a little smushing, maybe if I need to, making sure that I'm going to get right into that 1/4 inch position. And I just thought that that looked really cute. It kind of has like a double swag on there. This is a way that we're adding a little bit of dimensional detail. So if you see with the single line, it looks great, but with the double line, look at it, it looks even cooler. Doesn't that look awesome? I love it. So what we're doing is we're just creating a little bit more density, a little bit more 3D aspect to it. And I'm going to use my spacing gauge as I go around to try to make sure my design is going to be nice and clean. And if this doesn't fit exactly, you could smush a little bit, but it's all going to work out. It's not going to be that far off that you have to worry about it too much. So we'll get right to that circle. And again, if you were at home, you wouldn't necessarily need to rotate your sandwich. Obviously, it's impossible for you to see if stuff is behind the machine. So what I try to do is just make sure that it's a good visual for you. But if you were just at home and you were sewing, you wouldn't have to worry about that. You wouldn't have to rotate your sandwich at all. You can just leave it just how you want it. Okay, so we'll just keep going. We only have a few more to get into this. But what we're doing is we're kind of creating the boundaries. And you'll notice that we didn't sew that outer circle because we want to create a little room to put that spinifex in. So if I were to sew the circle, it would really cut into where I'm going to put that spinifex. This dip right here is where the spinifex will line up right in the center. And I think it looks so cute. So I wanted to make sure I left that space available for that part of the design. Sometimes my foot pedal gets a little further away from me and I have to bring him back. Okay, so here we go, just 2 more. And a little smushing is good, making sure I can get right to this intersection as I need to. Also, one of the things that you can check if it doesn't quite line up perfectly is make sure that you're on the circle right here. Because sometimes if I'm a little further back, it might not line up as well, so I might need to just take 1 additional stitch to get into where I want to. Okay, so this is the last one. All right, and then I'm going to show you something else cool. So we're just trying to use some of the tools in just some different unique ways that just show you the flexibility that you might have. So any kind of arc that you have that you can fit between that, you could do a bigger circle, which would maybe make these a bit longer. We still obviously had several sizes left on our circles on quilts. You know, we use the 8, but you could do all the way up to 12. And if you have the bigger circles, you could do the same thing. And as long as you can find something that would come out and make this arc and then come back in, you'll see that the way that we did it allowed it to be continuous. So that's whole design right here was just all with one pass. We haven't cut the thread, we haven't restarted or anything. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add one more element. So let's see, pin or based, let's see. I'm just going to see if there's some questions. Yeah, stitching line discs I think are super valuable. So you saw the drawing that I did, and of course I used the stitching line discs to do that. And I really found that lets me play with things. I especially draw in pencil because as I'm developing, maybe that doesn't work. So I kind of want to be able to take the lines out. Somebody did mention, and this is, I'll give credit, I think Lois Williams. Lois, I hope I said your name right. The outer rim tool is another tool that we have that is also just like that, right? But if you didn't have that and you had the circles on quilts, well, then you have a tool that can do that as well. So that's just something to think about. You know, it's always about use the ones that you have if, you know, whatever's working. Somebody says, I noticed that you're using stable strips with this template. Somebody doesn't like to use them. Well, I do. If you don't want to use them, you don't have to. I think so many times we have to remind ourselves that there are some rules, like for example with the Westalee foot, you don't want to have your presser foot up when you bring your needle down. That's a rule. That's a safety rule. But to use stable tape or not use it, I like it. I think it feels more comfortable for me. It holds things in place. It prevents my circle from being distorted. But maybe somebody else doesn't need that or doesn't want that for whatever reason. That doesn't mean that their choice is wrong. It just means they're different than me. So you should try and see which way works for you. If you want to try it when you get it without any stable tape, you should. And then if you feel like it's moving around or it's not doing what you want, then put some on. It's up to you. But that is a good question. I think we just have to remind ourselves that we're not, you know, a rule needs to have a function, like safety or practicality or whatever. But there's a lot of things about this process that are personal preference. So somebody said they get a wonky line when they stitch around the template. So maybe stable tape might help with that. Okay, so let's see where we are. So I'm going to grab my stitching line discs. Somebody just said they hadn't really seen those. So here, stitching line discs. What they are, the little interior dimension of the circle are different. See, that one's real small and this one's bigger. It depends on the marking tool that you're using. If I'm using something where the ink or the marking feature is really skinny, then I want to use something really skinny on the circle. But if I have something that's a little fatter, then I'm going to need something bigger. I usually just test it on a piece of paper, and as long as it writes smoothly and the disc is not wobbling around, then that's good. That's all you need. So let's see. All right, so let's see. I'm kind of scrolling down. I appreciate that you're being patient with me, but I want to make sure if there's a question. Sue, you asked, was the first arc the opposite way? No, I was just showing that I had stable tape on both sides, and when I set it back down, I just started going. So it doesn't matter. You can do all the lefties and then all the righties, as long as you just go in single, and then you do all the rest of it, and then you come back out on that same single. That's what makes it continuous. So there was no reason for, you know, going one direction or the other. As long as they're all completed, it'll all be fine. So let's see. I know I passed that already, right? There's so many comments. Good job, you guys. Okay, if I did not get your question, I do go back later and I will answer them. Okay, but let's get sewing. So we've used this. If I wanted to put another swag in here, obviously I could put this deeper one in and then I could have triple right here. But we're going to do something else in this space, so I don't want to close this space too much. So I don't want to put another one in there, but I could if I wanted to. That's one of the benefits of having these different depths on the back to back, is that it allows you to stack these kind of curves like that. So I love the stack swags on there, but 2 is enough for what we need right now. Okay, so let me show you where we're going. Here's our next one. Dun, dun, dun. This one is the Circles on Quilts spinning wheel. Let me flip it over. Number 21. Can you see that? Here, we'll put this back behind it. Number 21. I love this shape. It kind of has a fleur-de-lis when you sew it out. When you look at this little icon up here, it's actually sewn 2 times. This one is going to sew 4 lobes, and the lobes are at 90 degrees if you use the pin. We're not going to use the pin. We're just going to start sewing. So let me show you what are we going to do. Let's put it on. We don't want to have to cut our thread. So let's get this on. And I want my tape near the edge, kind of up near the top. What I don't want to see is I don't want this part flexing a lot, so make sure that this tape is secure. I don't want this to be wiggling a lot. So that's why I don't put the tape on this side, put it towards this edge where the foot will be touching. Okay, so this is why we have this middle line now, because we're going to add some elements. Now this piece is kind of skinny, like the shape that it makes, but we're going to show you how to make it wider. Right now, I'm going to line it up on that corner right there, and right here, I'm going to try to put it right in the middle, so that as it sews right to the tip, I'm going to have it right in that center line. Okay, so I'm on this line right here. So let me show you what just happened. If I did things correctly and I move this over, now I should be perfectly aligned right here on this side to be able to stitch right back to the other side. So in some ways this is kind of crosshair to crosshair, and then you just keep going. Anchor it right there. You're going to get this so that this can line right up on the line. Let's turn it so you can see the alignment real quick. I'm going to just tip the camera just a little so you can maybe see it a little better. Okay. So as I'm looking for it, there is a center line right here, and what I'm doing is just making that come right into the middle. I want the foot to end with the needle right on that crosshair line as far as it can go. And then I can just flip this and anchor it to the other side. If I need my spacing gauge, I can put it right there. Okay, just get it lined up. And now we can just sew back to that other side. And my needle gets right into that spot, right on that circle. And it's the same thing. I'm just going to keep going around. And I'm going to get myself right into that center. And I'm going to adjust my fabric a little bit because I want to make sure that I do have the fabric covering that BSR sensor. So I'm kind of getting to the limit. Now here is the shape that it made. And it's right on the center line, and it's touching right here at the corners. And now this really does not look anything like this. This is so much skinnier. And this is more like a wide, narrow squat, a little wide here and a little squat. And I love it. I think that's a really pretty shape. And now we have this space that we're going to put another element in. Plus, I'm going to show you an awesome cross hatching once we go around. So let's see how we're doing. I think I have so much material for this particular project that we may not be able to finish everything today. So right now it's almost 4 o'clock, so we got some more time. We're just going to keep on going. Hope you are still with me and you still are having fun. So let's kind of scroll down, see if we can get some of these. I do post all of these videos. You absolutely can watch it at your leisure and just do one piece at a time and then pause it and then do the next piece. And you can adapt it for any other templates that you want. So don't feel like this isn't going to be. I'm going to post it. It'll be available for you. But some of the things I want to show with this, I don't know if I can fit them all in the next 30 minutes. So I think we'll end up doing a part 2 for this one. So if you want to come back next week as well, we'll definitely have some more information on there. So if you're interested, no pressure, but we would really appreciate it if you would share this with anybody that you think might be interested in this design and also interested in this new BSR table capability. Because there are lots of people who might not know that we have that function, and that would be really great if you could share that. It might be useful for them. Okay, so I want to check my space. I think I'm maybe 1 or 2 stitches right above that circle right there. So I want to make sure I get right into the circle and get this lined up each time. And I think I just lost my spacing gauge. He's hiding. So I am kind of checking it with the spacing gauge, because here, if you don't get on the line, this is where I think it would really show that it's not nice and even, not right in the center. So I do want to make sure that I am checking for that as best I can, make sure that I get right to these points on each of these. And if I need one more stitch, I'm just going to take it right there to get right where I wanted to. Okay, so you can see these are quite pretty. And what we're doing is we're just building out, and we're using each of the tools in a kind of a unique way. So always I try to share with you some thoughts about how you can make these tools work for you in a way that is not obvious. So we've used that circles on quilts in a very unique way to create these arcs right here, and also to create the spacing. We've used point to point with that oval, and we use this center line for both of the back-to-back and the oval as the visual reference. And now we're using the circles on quilts in a very unique way. And you can see that I could use any circles on quilts. It doesn't have to be this one. If I had the other circles on quilts, it would make a different shape out here, but you could still do it, right? You could use this, and it's going to look not as pointy, but you could do the exact same technique with several of these circles on quilts and just get a different look. So I hope you will take that as an encouragement to play and just have fun. It doesn't have to be exactly perfectly perfect, but there's so many different options that you have that you should feel free to just play with them and do it in whatever way suits what you have. So did you see I had to kind of get my machine going, and that was because maybe I didn't have enough pressure right there. So make sure that you use all of the little washer spacers that come with your BSR kit. And then we'll just keep going around. The reason I want to go around is if I put all of these lobes in, they are creating the framework for the next piece. So I want to make sure they're all in there before I show you that next piece, or I won't be able to get you to the next piece. So here I won't rotate, I'll just sew backwards. I lined it up with my spacing gauge, get me right into this particular spot. And let's see, how many more do we have? Just a few more. So it's not that this is complicated, right? I mean, do you feel like that this is complicated so far? So go ahead and put a little note on there if you feel like it's complicated or not. What we're doing is we're just using really the reference lines, and we're just walking ourselves around. So I think the most complicated aspect of this right now maybe is just making sure that we're centered on the line. So you're just using this one side of the curve, and I'll get right into that center part, and we'll line this part up right back there. So let's make sure I have pressure on that BSR. You can really tell if you don't, because it just will not respond. So that's going to be that training piece that you're going to have to get comfortable with. And then we'll kind of smooth that out. Make sure our base is nice and smooth. So lots of opportunity to use our spacing gauge on this one, huh? So the pad of my thumb right here is right where that BSR is. It's right there. So we're on the last one, and now we are going to add that next element. So I'm going to kind of get this centered so you can see how we're going to do it. Let's come right in to the end of our circle right there. Okay, now I'm going to come back up to the top right here. Okay, so this line is double stitched, but you know, that's just how it is. If that bothered you, then you can make a different choice. What I want to do now is I'm going to create a space over here. And how far my space is, see this green arrow right here? There's a little line right there that kind of mimics the edge of the shape. And I'm trying to sort of get it lined up. It doesn't line up perfectly because we haven't used it the exact way, but I'm going to sew until I touch this line, and then I'm going to sew back to my center mark. So here we go. So this is vaguely touching the line right there, right on this outer curve where the green arrow is. So I'm going to come in, and I'm going to touch right there. Make sure that I'm connected. I can barely see it because of the camera, but I think I'll go one more. Now I'm going to come out to the center mark right there. Now I can line this up, and let me show you what we want to do. We need to get back to the center with this position right there. So first I want to touch the line this way. So this is a little bit more complicated, right? But it's going to give us a really cool crosshatch. And we'll get right up to the center. So if I need to fudge the center, I will. Let me show you what it looks like real quick. I'm going to scoot this out. Right here, this is the center, so we kind of are trying to get this to line right up on this center. That's what we want to stitch back to. Mine's a little bit off, but remember these lines will go away. So we're going to do this one more time. We're anchoring at the top first. As we rotate, this green line right here, there's a little white line. I'm lining it up right there. It's creating this space, and that's going to let me keep that space pretty much the same each time. So I don't have to use my spacing gauge because I want it a little bigger than this. I don't want a 1/4 inch. So that's why I'm using this. And that's something that's repeatable with this arrow as we go around. So I'm at the top. I'm going to echo that and sew until I touch. So get the foot to close that stitch, and then I'm going to stitch up to the white line, maybe right there. And now I'm going to rotate to the other side, and I'm going to get myself lined up on the center. Right? So I might have to push this back a little bit. We just really want to line up the center position right there so we can get right into the center. Now, am I ready to sew? I'm not quite ready. I need to stitch backwards first. I have to close this part back here and then move forward. So that's the piece you don't want to forget. Close that, and now come right up to the top. Okay, so right there, now that element, that whole little echo for that side is completed. And you can see we have this really cool crosshatch right there. This gives that little bit of three-dimensionality right there. It's awesome. Love it. So really 2 different ways to use this. This is not how we would traditionally use this, and this cross-hatching like that is not how we would traditionally use that. But don't you think it looks amazing? I really think that's a very innovative way to use this tool and get a lot more value. And then if you have, say you have 2 or 3 different circles on quilts, well, you have 2 or 3 different, maybe even 20 different looks that you can create with those tools. And if you had a large Spinifex, you could also do this with a large Spinifex. It's the same style, and it can create a really unique look. Like a Spinifex number 11 would make something very cool like this. It's all about this topper shape that you're creating. So let's go ahead and we'll add a few more of these so we can reiterate the process. I'm at the anchor point right here at the top of the design. So I'm at this point over here, and I'm going to line up my green arrow, so it's vaguely touching the stitch line right here. And I can visually adjust it. If it seems a little skinny, you can, move it. We want it bigger than a quarter, just a little bit. I mean, bigger than the 1/2 inch spacer. Okay, so then we'll come in, sew that side. When you come out, your crosshair mark is your reference mark right there to make sure that you have the same spacing. If we're trying to keep it the same on both sides, well then it should cross right exactly on that crosshair line. So that's how that crosshair line got to be used, because he's giving us that perfect spacing for that side. So close it, right? Go backwards to touch the line and then go forwards. All right. And let's see, we'll just keep going. We'll get these other sides done. So once you've got that process, I think it's going to be maybe a little bit easier to go faster. You'll get the concept and then you won't have to think about it as much. Just come back up to the white line and then flip it around. You can even use it more like visual spacing as you get comfortable. As long as you can get your center right to that spot, then you're going to have a nice pretty line. Oh, who knows what I did wrong? If you know, go ahead and put it in there. So if that happens to you, it's fine. Just go backwards. Close the design and then go forwards. It won't matter. A few more extra stitches, who cares, right? So I'm right at the top. And then same thing here. I don't even have to rotate my sandwich. There's my green arrow and there's my stitch line. I could just massage it a little bit. And then we'll come in to this side. Touch. And then come back to that white line right there, that crosshair line. All right, and then we'll just keep going. All right, always like to get these little guys lined up so that they can easily come right back to that center position. And the reason that we are sewing back to the white line, in order to do this cross hatch, I could sew down and back up, but that center line with the crosshair square is the exact right spacing, and I only have to do a few stitches right there to get to it, rather than go all the way around, which I would prefer not to do. So I find that that's using the tools that are already there. You've already got those markings, so that makes it easy, and then you don't have to do a lot of work to get things lined up. So right here, green arrow is lined up, so that's this spacing right here, and we'll just sew in. I gotta adjust my hand, make sure that fabric is touching nice. Okay, come back up to your white line, and then we'll get this side lined up. Right there. So go backwards first, touch, and then close that element on this side. So right there where you saw it kind of took a big stitch, what that means is I don't have enough pressure. So I can tell that, training wise, even for me, I'm going to have to be really cognizant of making sure I have that pressure right here in the front. So the first machine, the first Bernina that had the 440, that had the BSR was the Bernina 440. So I know there's several after that do have it. And typically, if your machine in the initial days, like the 440 was the top of the line, it came with it. It wasn't something you purchased separately. But now there are machines that maybe have the BSR available and some that don't. The best place to get that information is you can just contact your Bernina dealer or a Bernina dealer if you don't have one, and just ask them about your machine and they would be able to help you. So I'm right here. This is my BSR right there. I want to make sure that I'm activating it and make sure that I have good pressure on it. And if I keep that pressure, then I can make sure that it's going to sew beautifully. Hang on just a second. Let's get ourselves readjusted here. I think it needs more pressure. There we go. So now you'll be able to see where we're going. Hopefully I didn't get too wonky on this one, right? I try not to let go of my design in the middle. Like, try not to let go of this template when you're in the midst of sewing your design. So hold on to it, make sure that you can get your center all lined up, and then only stop when you're right on that white line, when you get to the top or when you get to your white line. So let's close the bottom of the design, right there. Okay, and we're almost finished. We are just the one more round to go. So I'm going to smush just a little bit, make sure I can get this space nice, because remember we said we need it just a little bit bigger than that half. So I'm just going to come out just slightly, make sure that he's going to give me what I want. And then touch right there and up to your crosshair line right there. And now we'll be finished. So let's get lined up for this last one. Right there. And right there. We should be able to get right to the very top. So go backwards. Reminder, reminder, always finish the design so you get that nice cross hatching. And then I'll move my hand a little bit so I can get that pressure on that BSR. And I'm right at the top of the design. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll tie this off. And I wanted to show you that part on the inside. So let's go ahead and just tack this. I am going to cut this now, so I want to show you right now. I'm going to turn the BSR off, and here's why. If I'm not moving 2 millimeters, it's not going to take a stitch. And right now I don't want to move a whole 2 millimeters, so I'm literally going to turn the BSR off, and now it's going to respond to me, and I can take those tacking stitches. So, you know, if you're in your BSR and you want to take 2 tiny little stitches or 3 tiny little stitches, it's not going to do it if you have it set at 2 millimeters because you're not moving that much. So it feels kind of weird when that happens. So that's just an important reminder that you're going to turn that BSR off for your tie off. Then you'll bring your needle up, and I can use my knee lift. I'm going to just raise my foot, and I'll hold on to this thread, get everybody lined back up, and then I can just needle down and up, and I'll lift up my knee lift again. And now I can cut all these threads. Okay, so let's cut that. And there we go. So there's our design. I am loving it so far. I cannot tell a lie. I just think it is so pretty. And it's got a lot of chalk marks, but let's see what we can do if we can flip it over real quick. So we've got some threads we got to cut off here. What do you think? Do you like that so far with that pink thread? And I think I told you guys I had a little bit of a wonky stitch, remember? This was what happened. It kind of had a weird bobbin area. So this might be an area I might want to go clean up. You know, that's kind of like a bonbon time. But all the references are nice and conveniently there. This would be really easy to clean that up. And that's just something that happens to everybody. You know, sometimes maybe the thread got caught. Maybe there was an extra thread under there and it just didn't stitch well. So we can always clean that up later. And we've got a lot more stitching to do, so that would be an easy way to fix that. Okay, so let's see. Let's come down and see. If you have a question, you can put it in. I'm going to kind of scroll down to the bottom real quick and see. There is no instructions written. I do have a lot of classes that I'm actually working on right now that are classes that are paid, and this is not. So I tend not to do written instructions for my classes that are free. Typically, the ones that are paid classes, I try to have some kind of written instructions. And I hope you'll just understand. I mean, this is just something I dreamed up, and I'll go ahead and I'll put my picture of it. I already put it out online on Fabricated Quilts. But I do show you step by step, and I try to illuminate each piece in the design. So the video is out there if you want to walk through it, and I do try to give you all of the sizes that you would need as you're working on this particular part of the design. So, all right, so let's see where we are. I don't stay awake all night, but I was playing. I was at a show this past week, and a lot of times the show, you know, you're demoing things, and that's kind of free time to be innovative because you just get to try to see what they can do and show people stuff. So this was one of the things that I played with when I was at the show, and it ended up turning out really pretty. So it was really fun to kind of tighten it up and actually make something out of it. And so anyway, let's go ahead. We're going to add one more piece to this design, and then we'll show you the sample of where we're going to go next week as well. So next week I'll have this part all cleaned up, but you can see it's stitched pretty well overall. And let me kind of get it up a little close to you. That's the stitch regulation right there. That's 2 millimeter stitch regulation. Pretty nice, right? And that's the back. So let's see if we can see it on the front as well. Right? I think it looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. So if that's something that you're struggling with and you want some more flexibility, then you can have that with this awesome Bernina table. All right, so let me do one thing. I am planning to use this same sample next week, and we're going to put some different designs in different spaces. So what I want to do is I'm going to put an embellishment in every other one for today, for our last design. So what I want to do before we get too far is I'm going to mark an X in every other one. I have a really bad habit of putting a design where I don't want it. So like no design goes here, X, okay? Open, X, open, X, open, X. So only where I see this opening does my design go. And what we're going to do is we're going to put our spin effects number 8, and it's going to start right here. It's going to connect to this line, and we're going to put the embellishment in here, and then we're going to jump stitch to the next one. So we only have 4 of them to do. So it's going to go pretty quick. And of course, as I said before, you can use any spin effects. You don't have to use this one if you don't have it. Use whatever you have. This particular size is 5.5, and I already tested it. I know that this can fit very nicely in this space. So the foot is going to start right here, and you'll see right there, it's not going to be bigger than this. This is the correct size to fit. So when I did this one, the size dimension on this is 7.5. Just for your reference, okay? I'll flip it over. This is the Circles on Quilts spinning wheel number 21, and this one sews out at 7.5 inches. You can see the number right there. So if you used something that is essentially the same size for this part, the Circles on Quilts, you should get the same dimension here in terms of height, right? If you used a 5.5 inch Circles on Quilts, you might not have enough room because it's going to be shorter. Right? So you could use something 7.5 inches or bigger, and then your 5.5 spin effects will fit in this inner space. Okay? And you can always test that just by sticking it on there. It's not rocket science. Just put it on there, and as long as the position of the needle is inside, you're good to go. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to pick the needle up, the bobbin thread right down here on this white chalk line right there. So right now, see how my bobbin thread won't pull up? If that ever happens to you, just rotate your flywheel to the front. What happens sometimes is it might not have cleared the bobbin. So it's still connected on the hook. Just rotate your flywheel to the front, and then you can release your bobbin. And that does happen with a lot of machines. I've seen that in the past. So that's just a little handy trick. So I'm going to get my needle seated right where I want it. Just get these threads out of the way. When I sew this, I have a beautiful, perfect center line. If this is a little bit off of your white line, just center it on the stitch line, right? Because now the stitch line is what matters because the chalk's going to go away. So line it up on the existing design now. If the line, right here was just slightly off to this side, we want this design to be centered on what will stay on the fabric. Since the chalk line is going to go away, visually center it on the design, okay? All right, so let's go. We've got it centered perfectly. And I didn't tie off my threads, and that's okay. So let's just sew this part of the design. Kind of fits right in here nicely. It's like almost a perfect echo for this area. Now, I want to put a little more detail in this. This could be just fine by itself. I mean, let's take it off. I'll show it just so you can see it. That could look so cool, right? It doesn't need anything else, but I want more. So I'm going to put something else on there. So let's put this back in. My tape's getting a little worn, but I think it'll stick a little longer. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rotate my template just a little bit. I'm going to hook it around the foot, and right here at the top, I'm going to make this edge touch the existing stitch line, maybe just slightly over the edge. As I sew, I'm going to sew around until my needle touches the stitch line of the other side right there, and I'm going to come back to the center. Now, again, I can leave it just like that. I can have all of the ones with just a single element like this and pushing the design sort of in a rotation. If I do it all on this left side, on each one of them, it'll kind of make the design rotate that way. It'll create a sense of motion. If I want a sense of balance, I'll just put one on the other side. And that's going to create a cute little crosshatch right at the top and give a little bit of density, a little bit of dimension to that center element. Now, we did not tie off because we didn't need to. We have a lot of thread that built up right there. But now that we're done, I'm just going to put a couple of stitches right there. And I'm going to pick up my needle. And I'm going to take all of the pressure off of my foot. So let's kind of change our camera angle just a little, get you guys in just a little bit closer, I think. There we go. I think that's maybe a little bit better angle for you. Let's tighten up everybody. Okay. All right. Now I'm just going to loosen up all the pressure on the foot, and I'm just going to scoot my fabric over so I get to the next one, right? So we'll go right over to here, and I can lower this down to get my foot centered right on that white line, and I can position my needle exactly where I want it. Now, this line right here, I'm not going to sew over it because the design is actually up into this space, but I'll cut that later. So again, line this up on your existing design, no longer on the chalk line, right? You want it centered right on that lobe that you've already made. And then we can start sewing. And here we're going to be tacking that initial stitch because we're going to sew many times right there. So we'll do this side and just put this echo on this side. Touch and back. Okay, and then we'll do the other side. And we'll line that right up just so that the edge of that is touching right on the existing line. And then the foot is going to sew a 1/4 inch away from that. And you'll get a cute little crosshatch right there at the top. And that's going to give a little bit of three-dimensionality, a little bit more stitching right in there. And then we'll turn that and we'll get a little bit of that stitching right there. And so we only have 2 more of these to do. So pick up your needle, use your knee lift or release your presser foot. And then you go to the next spot right there. We want to make sure that we're going to keep our BSR anchored so that it'll sew really nicely. And all this extra jump stitch right here, we'll just cut that off later, right? We're tacking it by sewing over that area multiple times. So right now there's no tack stitch, but as we come back around, right here, we're back to where we started. And maybe one more stitch, I think, to make sure I'll get it right to that end. And it doesn't matter which direction we go, right? So touch the existing line and stitch back. Whenever you're stitching back, here's the rules. Let's talk about that for a second. I'm going to line it up right there on the existing stitch line. That means my foot will stitch a 1/4 inch away from it. Let's see, can you guys see really good? Let's adjust, I think, a tiny bit more. Okay, can you see the alignment there on the end? Right here, I'm touching right on the stitch line right there. So I'm pulled forward, the foot's tucked right into there, and I'm going to stitch all the way until the needle touches here and back. Once I start this process, Don't let go until you're back to where you started. You're going to stitch and hold everything in place until I get back to here. So as I start, right, we'll start sewing. Here I'm actively going to change directions, and I'm going to keep holding everything in place until I get back to the end. And then, so I have my BSR sound off. I guess it's not going to make, there we go. So I want to turn it off so I can do that tack stitching, right? Because we said we can't do that without it. And then lift up our needle, and we have just one more to go. So take that pressure off of the foot so that thread can move, and we'll just scoot these excess threads out of the way. Okay, so right here I can get my needle right in that center position, right in the stitch line, and then I'm going to line up right on that existing design, right in that pink, you know, right at the apex right there is where you're going to line up. Okay, so once I've got that, I'm ready to sew. And I'll make sure I connect right up to the circle there, and then touch this side. Touch, and right back down to the center. And we'll do that last side right there. All right, now let me show you where we're at. I'm going to take the ruler off, and I want to show you one more thing about this BSR feature that is pretty awesome before we say goodnight. If I had a different foot that is made by Bernina, I could put that on. Right now I have the ruler foot on, but I don't have to use the ruler foot. I can use a different foot if I want to. Let's see, I think I want to sew this way so I won't get trapped by any threads, because I'd have to cut underneath as well. And what I want to do is put a fill right in here and talk about that BSR. So if I wasn't comfortable freehand stitching on this line right here, I can easily grab my tool. This is the same tool that I used to sew it. And I can line it right up on the center line, and I can check the spacing right there. So maybe I need to get in that stitch line first. Okay, now I can check it, and I can get right over to this spot because this is where I want to come. So just gently get myself right over to this little spot. Now, on my sample, I had some free motion detail, and this is related to the fact that we're using this BSR feature. If I want to put a little design in this space, right now the stitch length is 2 millimeters. Well, this space is really, really small. And if I use a 2 millimeter stitch to fill this, it could be really hard to get a nice, pretty, tight stitch to fill this tiny little space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my BSR on, and I'm going to adjust the stitch length to maybe about 1.6, which is kind of small. We all know that, right? So I have to turn this off too. This is obviously, my gears are lifting up my foot, so I'll have to get it to behave. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just put some little tiny stitches in here, and notice how if I'm moving now, it's still going to move. Oh, come on, there we go. But because I'm using tighter stitches, I can work in this tiny area. If I was trying to do 2 millimeter stitches and do this little ribbon, I think it would be really hard to do because you wouldn't have enough stitching to make this round and pretty. So if I was using a foot that's not the ruler foot, if I was using their echo foot, the cutout foot, the number 29 foot, I could still use that foot, and I can still have good visibility, and I could use that BSR with any Bernina foot. I don't have to use this ruler foot. I could use any Bernina foot that is capable of free motion and I can have beautiful stitches, and I can adjust my stitch quality to fit whatever I need to. So you can see how tiny this is and how tiny these little curves are. And if I tried to do this with a 2mm stitch, this would be really hard to make these things round. So I can independently adjust my stitch length, and that BSR is going to help me keep it exactly what I need. So if I'm doing microfills, I can make that stitch go down to a very, very small number. And that makes it really easy to put those microfills in and still have that stitch regulation function working for you. So this can be a really great product for the person that it fits. And this Fun and Fancy, you can see all these different design options that we have for you. So we've tried to show you quite a few different ways that you can use it. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my sample and pull it up here and just talk about what we're going to do next time, because we haven't used all the tools in the Fun and Fancy. And part of my goal with this little process was to be able to use all of them and pair them all together. So the one tool that isn't part of this set is that Circles on Quilts. So Circles on Quilts is its own set, and I'm just going to cut this, and I'm going to come out just a little bit so that you can see a little bit bigger picture of it. Okay, so here what we're doing is we're working on texture, and by adding each of these extra lines, we're creating more texture. We're adding a little bit of density so that, you know, instead of having this big open space right here, well, now we have something more. So the space is only essentially 2 fingers right now. And pretty much this design, I think when I'm finished with all of the different elements that we're going to show you, it's about 25 inches. So that's why my fabric is 28 inches square, because it'll fit in at 25 inches, and then I can put some fills maybe around the outside if I want to. So let's see, should we flip it? I don't think it's going to really show you anything different than what you saw before. These are our jump stitches, which are fully tacked in. So all we'd have to do is just cut those. Those are not going to come out. All of those are fully stitched in. They have a lot of stitching holding them, so they're not going to pull out. And that's what you're going to get on the back. I think there's some little weird thread right there. That's from the scissor button. Maybe one more little stitch I'll have to pick out right there, but no big deal. Those are easy to get those all out. Okay, so this is where we're at today. We've done Circles on Quilts, the inner oval from the 3 by 1.5 inch simple oval. We've used the Circles on Quilts 21, and we've used the Spin Effects number 8, and we've created sort of this central motif and medallion. And now we do want to do some other things. So let me show you where we're going for next week. So this is kind of a lighter color, so it might be a little hard to see, but let's see what we can do. We'll get you some options, and we'll kind of put some shadow on it so you can see it a little better. So on this one, what we did is we mimicked the same element here on the top. So we have all of this done already, and we just put the double swag here, and then you have the option here of doing a crosshatch in this space. And so we'll show you how to use the Circles on Quilts to do this crosshatch. And then these are the same. This is the oval, and this is the same back to back right here. And then we already showed you this part. And then another option would be to do something like this. And this is where you're going to create a little space between the swags, right? So that this is the high texture, and then this is open, and that way if I fill here and I fill here, then you'll see right now this is what you're going to get. You'll get the punch of this as the lift and this as the high density quilting. So let me show you my picture one more time, because we had some other ideas on there. And this is the next part that hasn't been stitched out yet, but you could do stacked arcs like this to fill in the little tulip top, and that would be an option for you, and you can put different fills in them or just leave them plain. And then this is the 12-inch arc, and I'm going to show you how we can sort of close this crosshatch and echo this, and then also how we can put some little circles and jewels in there and create a final circle. And this is only a 1/4 inch, but I think I would want to mimic the same spacing on this side and this side, so that's where I'm going. So we're going to be using the 12-inch arc template, but we're also going to be using the 12-inch arc that is an actual arc that's big. So what happens if we do the inside here, it will only go so far. So in order to have a nice smooth curve as this gets larger and larger, this is going to give us a bigger curve right there. And we'll talk about some other options that you might have for that as well. So I am done for today, 4:36, and I hope you've had a great time. In June, I am going to be traveling, so please pay attention to the notifications in case I'm not available, because I have 2 shows that I'll be teaching at. I do have some slots in my Reno Quilt Show class for my Sashiko class, which is a terrific class, which really only requires 2 templates. It requires the mini multi-arc and the 12-inch arc. And you have the ability to bring your own sewing machine and your own sew steady table, so you won't have to use tools that fit anything else. So that class is available. I also have some spaces in there for a medallion class that is paper piecing, if you're interested in that. It's called the Mariner's Compass color wheel, and I have pictures of that on my website, on my Facebook page, so if you're interested in that. So I'd love to be able to meet you, and hopefully if you feel up to it and you're ready to travel and you feel like your community is COVID safe, we'll see you in Reno. And I'm also teaching at the Kansas City show, and my feather class and my beginner class are already sold out, but I have 2 other classes and they added another feather class. So I do have room in my feather class at my Kansas City show if that is your area. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope you guys have a wonderful week and happy quilting. I always want to see what you're doing, so send me pictures. I love seeing what you're up to. Okay guys, thanks. I'll go back and I'll double check all the questions and I'll respond as I can over the next couple of days and make sure that I get all your questions answered. So have a lovely day. Take care. Bye-bye.